forward with funds as quickly as possible. Andre, over to you.
Okay, I want to start with two preliminaries. First of all, I'm from the World Economic Forum, so my added value, if there's any, is actually to bring in a little bit of business perspective, if this is possible. And so I would like all to accept that I'm not a specialist of all those topics, so excuse myself if ever I should bring something forward which is not totally in line with what was said. And secondly, I will not answer your questions because frankly they are a little bit outside of the reach of many of the business questions, but I want to talk a little bit more about a possible view of business. And again, I cannot represent all business, I just can try to share some of the views. And in order to do so, I want to go through a short frame setting, at least as it is perceived from our side, and then actually go forward to explain a little bit some roles a business can take. First of all, I think that we perceive that there is a certain tension between resources, between combating root causes of climate change and actually talking about adaptation. And there is actually some challenge here because, at least for business, you might be more interested in combating root causes than actually working on adaptation. But I want to get further that there are actually more reasons to go there. And if we talk about resources, because at the end of the day, I mean, being more on the business side, that is going to be the first level which we need. And I agree with the other people here saying that it needs to be more than just resources. There needs also to be the ways how to use them, which is actually sometimes a challenging factor for business to engage there because they feel they're putting in their pledging perhaps, but they don't really see where these things will go. But if I look at some resource fundings as I could perceive them, there is the pledges we heard, and there is a big challenge actually about pledges not being fulfilled. And I would also raise that there will be an increasing contrary factor there because given the outcome of all the actions against the crisis, we will have more and more developed countries which will have incredible deficits. And they will be more and more challenged to actually spend more money outside their country while they still have to deal with inside problems. So, and similarly, it's also for companies when they were engaging in pledging and what they would call probably more philanthropic, is actually that might not be sustainable if they're under increasing pressure because the crisis is really turning down their business. The second one is really, and we heard that, is building on existing or coming carbon market schemes. Now, I just would like to raise, this is also totally related to the overall business climate, and we've seen a real incredible drop on those exchanges when the crisis came in, and also due to some not really foreseen imbalances between the offering and the demand. So and I think the element I would like to bring in, whatever we discuss here, it has to be sustainable one way or the other, and it would be very, and I would like to come back, it would be almost offending to myself if we start to build any scheme on something which we all know, if we analyze it in a little bit more rigorous way, that will not be sustainable. Because again, we're going to make promises on things which we will not be able to deliver on the long run. And I think even more, we need to keep in mind, as I said, that carbon markets had a lot of hype and have actually folded quite importantly, which means that it's a little bit like our pension systems, building on schemes which say we have an average growth rate of financial markets of above I don't know how many %, and then they just fold. So there is a real challenge. And then I think there is...
That's the danger.
I think today, if you look at the carbon markets, how they have evolved, I mean, if you say you want to take a certain percentage out of them, I mean, that is possible. But if you look at the real market value of this percentage, it has gone down very considerable. So we have somewhere a challenge here. How do we really up that one? So then there is the last point, which is, I think, very interesting, and it was mentioned, is actually new money funds. I mean, we could go from a more legislative side and, like, for example, just to take Switzerland, we have talked here about the CO2 tax, which should be then funding either adaptive measures and others. But the big challenge is then you have to go through with them. I mean, what too many business people have seen, that there is an initial promise. They actually take voluntary actions to prepare for that, and then somewhere along the road, the political wish to do so is no more there, and then they're just standing somewhere out in the rain. So another element I would like to put forward is, whatever is done, it needs to give a forecastable vision in the future to the business so they can build business models on it. Because another challenge to the carbon markets is actually, it's based on the assumption, just to come back to that one, that we continue to have a need to actually buy rights to emit carbon. But what we should not underestimate, I mean, for business people, this is a cost they can actually reduce themselves by emitting less carbon. So actually many businesses will be looking at total new business models, taking in account that they will be confronted further and further down with the need to actually put in the money of real environmental impact and many other impacts. But still, there's the opportunity to look at models based on, as we heard, transportation, logistics, to actually get money in. But again, I would like to raise here that there might be a real issue on sustainability, because if we say we will put more funds out of transportation, means like air transport and so on, there are already very strong discussions going on in the logistic business to redefine what is actually going to be logistic business version 2, when actually you have to take fully in account what is the environmental impact. And then many things won't happen anymore. Like today we're producing iPods, which we buy here in Europe, in China, and fly them in with a jumbo jet. This is clearly not a sustainable model. So somewhere we have to watch out that we're not building on incomes which will not be existing anymore, because business has already found out that that might not be sustainable. So let's get back now to the role of business. And I see it actually in 2 levels. One is really the short term. And again, all what can happen has to be based on a forecastability and some level playing field. The worst thing we can do is, because most businesses operating globally, is creating situations where in one part of the world you're treated like that, and the other part you're treated differently, which will create very important issues, and which actually will only trigger that people will go for now environment impact optimization, like they did in sometimes for tax optimization, going where it is the least impacted. And I think that's not what we want to see. On the short term, as I said, we have the pledge side, where actually business can pledge to some of the programs, and we have seen some announcement here. But I would just raise again, this is what I would call quote-unquote philanthropic, and has a big challenge that when there's big pressure, this will not come. Another one, and there are actually some representatives here, is what we would call social entrepreneurs. They're actually business people. Now this is on the micro level. It's not going to produce the big billions, but by adding up many of them, it will actually produce this result. It's actually business people who are actually building a business model on addressing some of those adaptation needs, and actually not needing much external funds, but actually building a business on them. And by adding them up, it's a little bit almost like the microcrediting approach, we can actually build further. And the World Economic Forum is actually building a community of them, trying to help them to extend and get their model scaled up. And that is something which doesn't need much outside funding. It just needs entrepreneurial people who want to do it and get the chance to do so. On the long term and on the more impactful side is really a understanding of business that actually helping adaptation and in general developmental targets is actually investing in future new markets. We see that already on a little bit higher up the level mode, when you see that companies like Nestle developing now products for, I would say, more poorer parts of the society, which actually have some aspects on helping them create more new business, newer projects. Yes, exactly. And I think there is a real opportunity to show that actually such investments are actually opportunities for going further. But here I come back. As long as we haven't get together and act up to create this level playing field, and some kind of real forecasting possibility, meaning if you do the investment now and you think of getting back some of the investment over 5 to 10 years, you want to be assured that those 5 to 10 years will happen the way as you have forecasted, and you have a real chance. And I come back to the Swiss model. Many companies here feel negatively impacted because they invested in a future model to come where it made business sense to do so, and then it doesn't come through like that. You don't raise wish to support. So that was really the business, what I would say the business side, and I think it's sometimes a little bit underestimated, and so I hope this helps a little bit.
That's very useful to have. Now I can see some of the panel members want to respond to each other's comments, but I'm going to go to the floor. But let me just make sure, in a way, Andre, if I could, just for my own benefit, try and understand what you're saying. In a way, you're saying, look, there are business opportunities around adaptation. For example, social entrepreneurs, supporting social entrepreneurs, creating a platform, blah, 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 and also the bottom of the pyramid stuff.